Part 37. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 361. Chapter 361 Foundation Building Successful. Yuan thought for a moment, otherwise, let's wait until I give birth to the babies. We'll start moving, and the only people left in this yard will be bachelors. At that time, it will not be so convenient for Mrs. Feng and Mrs. Su to take care of her. You will definitely have to move after you move. Singles will always get married, and there will only be more and more people in the yard in the future. Mujukan nodded in agreement, but he could buy the courtyard first, and he had to buy a few small courtyards. From now on, my parents will have one, my grandpa will have one, and their family of 4 will also want one. In the days that followed, Mujukan wandered around the city whenever he had free time. Juyo City is really big. There are large immortal cultivating families in the 4 cities in the southeast and northwest, and their strength is not bad. Each family apparently has a nascent soul ancestor sitting in charge, but it is unknown whether there are any cultivators who transform themselves into gods. Mujukan originally wanted to go out to Juyo City to buy a mountain to build a house in an outside town, but after thinking about it, he decided not to do it. It is safer inside the city. In case of any war, there is a protective formation in Juyo City. He always felt that Juyo Forest was a hidden danger. Now he can't go out for a long time, otherwise he can go in and hunt some high-level monsters. Even if the high-level monsters don't come out to cause harm to people, once they come out of the Juyo Forest, they will be worse than directly causing harm to people. The thunder disaster caused by each of them is a catastrophe. In the end, Mujukan bought 3 yards on this street, which cost him almost 500,000 spiritual stones. Of course these 500,000 spirit stones are well spent, and these courtyards will always be yours. After that, in addition to taking care of Yuan, Mujukan devoted the rest of his time to repairing his lightning protection array. Another half-year passed unknowingly. On this day, the room where Bai Zi was retreating suddenly experienced spiritual energy fluctuations, and a large amount of spiritual energy surged towards his room. The fluctuation of spiritual energy lasted for half a day before stopping. This means that Bai Zi has succeeded in building the foundation. 10 days later, Bai Junyan's house also experienced spiritual energy fluctuations, which lasted for nearly half a day before dissipating. Bai Junyan successfully built the foundation. The third one is Bai Junyi. The Feng family was left in the end. Until their father and son consolidated their cultivation and came out, there was still no movement in the Feng family's house. The father and son stood guard outside Feng's house worriedly. Dad, Mother, Bai Junyan's brows were knotted. Bai Zi held the hands of his 2 sons tightly. You must believe in your mother. The 2 nodded heavily. Yuan also looked at it worriedly. One of the reasons for her delay in building the foundation was lack of qi and blood. Another reason was her state of mind, commonly known as the inner demon calamity. It is difficult for people to let go of what my mother has experienced in this life. Especially when you are promoted, the evil spirits in your heart will be infinitely magnified. At this time, Mrs. Feng in the room had a face twisted in pain. She clenched her teeth and sweat poured down her forehead. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that she is struggling and persisting at this time. For a long time, blood flowed from Feng's mouth, and the clothes in front of her were all red. In the mist, the familiar faces around Feng suddenly became ferocious, and even opened their huge mouths to bite her. When Feng saw it, she saw it was her father. She couldn't figure out where this place was and why her father came to bite her. Can she kill her father? While Feng was entangled, her father had already bit her, and the pain brought her back to her senses. As a last resort, Feng raised her sword and struck down with it. With a squeaking sound, her father disappeared in a flash. The next one was her mother. She raised her sword again. After that, all her acquaintances rushed towards her, eager to eat her flesh and drink her blood. The last one is a little girl. Feng's raised sword has not been lowered for a long time. Isn't that little girl's ICER when she was a child? Feng was horrified and puzzled. Suddenly the little girl smiled at her and rushed towards her. In panic, Feng's hand shook and the sword fell down. Zhizzy. After a few sounds, the little girl disappeared. At this moment, the surrounding fog surged towards her body. Ms. Feng had no choice but to sit down and perform her exercises. Everyone outside saw the spiritual energy pouring into Feng's house. At this point, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. 10 days later, when Ms. Feng walked out of the house, the first thing she saw was Yuan. Yuan suddenly felt strange when she met Feng's eyes. Yuan's heart sank. She stepped forward to greet her and called out sharply, "Mother." Ms. Feng nodded towards Yuan. She looked at her husband and son with beautiful eyes. "You all can go and do whatever you are supposed to do. I want to stay in seclusion for a while." Brothers Bai Zi and Bai Junyan nodded doubtfully, looking at the face of their daughter-in-law, mother, who was 10 years younger. They looked at me and I looked at you as they looked at the leaving Feng. Bai Zi nodded to Yuan and took his 2 sons back to his house. Only Yuan was left in a daze in the yard. She frowned, as if she had changed into a different person. The look in her eyes was so strange. Did something take her away? Seize the house? Yuan was shocked because she was the one who took away this body. Did your mother find out? Yuan looked deeply at Feng's house and walked towards her house. In the training room, Ms. Feng sat on the futon blankly. During the foundation building process, I clearly remember what happened in the fog. The people who appeared there were all dead people, whether they were her relatives or enemies, they all appeared there. Why did the 4th child appear when he was young? Feng Shi is not a novice in cultivating immortals now, so she naturally understands what it means to seize a body. Thinking of this, Ms. Feng couldn't help but recall that in Yujia village, her 4th child had changed a lot since she was 4 or 5 years old. It could be said that she transformed from a silent child to a fierce woman overnight. After that, she inexplicably understood a lot. Although she couldn't express anything at that time, she knew it in her heart. In other words, Xiao Sier was already dead at that time and was taken away by the current person who doesn't know where he came from. No wonder it happened when Xiao Sier was young. At this time, Ms. Feng felt extremely sad and conflicted. It's sad that my 4th son died at such a young age, but without this, what would be her fate and the fate of the children? Being rubbed to death by Yu Yang? At least there will be no happy days like today. Feng Shi smiled bitterly. Why bother? The current Xiao Sier has never done anything to regret them. Without her, their family would not be where they are today. Ms. Feng took a deep breath and adjusted herself. The previous attitude must have made Xiaoxi very sad. She got up and opened the door and came to Yuan's house. She reached out and knocked on the door. Yuan, who was in a daze in the room, heard a knock on the door. She waved her hand and the door opened, and she saw Ms. Feng standing at the door with a smile. Yuan twitched the corner of her mouth and said, "Mom, come in. Let's talk about anything slowly." Feng Shi nodded. "Mother, sit down." Ms. Feng sat down opposite Yuan, and Yuan waved a defensive shield. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 362. Chapter 362 Notice. The mother and daughter did this for a long time, and Ms. Feng kept looking at Yuan with a smile, which made Yuan feel hairy. Well. Yuan sighed in her heart, probably waiting for her to confess and be lenient. Haha, this cheap girl is really smart. Same, if you are not smart, how could you give birth to such extraordinary children? It can only be said that the royal family has good genes. Well, mother, you should know that I am not your daughter, right? Yuan spoke. Feng's expression did not change, and she still looked at her with a smile. Yes. Just Yuan was worried. Should you ask me something? She really didn't know what Feng Shi meant now. It was so unpredictable. There was no other way. Yuan gritted her teeth and said, Mom, actually I am not the first person to live in this body. Strictly speaking, my daughter died when she was 5 years old. She was another person from the same place as me. Her name was Yuan. Even when I was 9 years old, I gave old Yu the ginseng. I didn't know. Why was I reborn in this body? In my original world, I was killed by a bomb. When I woke up, I was in this body. My name is also Yuan. Yuan finished speaking anxiously, and glanced at Feng after finishing speaking. Feng's face darkened as she heard this, and then her face was full of anger. When she heard Yuan say that her name was also Yuan, Feng's face calmed down. Mrs. Feng looked at the little fourth child in front of her intently. She didn't expect that the little fourth child in front of her had such an origin. Before, she thought it was a body snatching, but now it seems that her daughter died because of her own bad luck. They must have resurrected the corpse. Speaking of it, she should be grateful for their arrival, so that the fourth child can grow up. The one who should be more grateful is Yuan now. After a while, Mrs. Feng relaxed her brows and said, Mother didn't blame you, nor did she come here to accuse you, or to do anything to you. No matter you are a mistress or not, you will always be a mistress in my heart. Where would we be without you? You are a good boy. After Mrs. Feng finished speaking, she took Yuan's hand and patted it gently. Maybe this is her real daughter. Thank you, Mother, Yuan said sincerely. After all, she is really a magpie bridge. With this body, she has been reborn, has cultivated the path of immortality, has a family, and has 2 unborn sons. Silly boy, Mom was a little confused before. Don't blame Mom. You are Mom's real child, otherwise why would you treat us so kindly? Mrs. Feng touched Yuan's cheek. If she wasn't her real child, is there anyone in the world who is like her little fourth son who has been carrying a whole family of oil bottles until today? Ms. Feng had a feeling that this should be the case. She believed that Yuan was her real child. He, sometimes I think so too, Yuan laughed sheepishly. Mrs. Feng patted her on the head and said in a gentle voice, Yeah, don't talk about this matter to anyone again in the future, you know. Yuan smiled with her eyebrows creasing. I understand, Mother. Mrs. Feng sighed, You kid, you are so easily satisfied. What do you want to eat? Mom will cook it for you. By the way, let's celebrate the success of our foundation building. Yuan raised her head and said, As long as it's made by my mother, it's fine. Mrs. Feng scratched Yuan's nose, and Xiao Sier's appearance successfully pleased her. This child must be lacking maternal love, as he is so easily satisfied. Then she got up and pushed Yuan towards their yard. Ms. Feng didn't know if her guess was true. In her previous life, Yuan entered a secret base for clothes training when she was 10 years old. After that, she never had with her parents again until her death. It is seriously lacking. Bai Zi, Yan'er and Yi are coming out, Feng shouted at the top of his lungs as soon as he arrived. The father and son, who had been anxious for a long time, hurried out after hearing the sound. As soon as they came out, they saw the intimate mother and daughter. Ms. Feng waved her hand towards them, Don't be stunned, go and cook a big meal. Yuan took out a storage bag and handed it to Feng, Mom, this is full of 4th-level monster meat. Eat this. Then he took out some spiritual vegetables and fruits. Mrs. Feng accepted them all without any courtesy. This was her daughter's filial piety. Xiao Sier, send a message to your elder brother and the others, and Mujukan is here. Feng didn't forget to ask her to do some work. Good. We are here too, mother-in-law. At this moment, Mrsu pulled Uncle Mu over. Feng's unfamiliar appearance confused them all before. After returning, they kept paying attention to the movements here. Feng's shouting so loudly to Bai Zi and his son was obviously to let them know that the incident was over, so they should come over quickly. Okay, my mother-in-law is here to help me. Ye will accompany your fourth sister. After that, they all went into the kitchen to help. Fourth sister, let's go. I will push you out to meet my brother-in-law and the others. Seeing that his mother's troubles were over, Bai Junyi pushed Yuan to the yard. Okay, Yuan said, taking out the sound transmission jade talisman and sending a sound transmission to the people outside. After receiving the message, people outside knew they wanted to celebrate Bai Zi's family of 4, and everyone brought gifts. Mujukan is in the new courtyard. He just finished cleaning up and arranged the formation today. He came back after receiving the message. So everyone had some fun in the evening before calling it quits. In the space, Mujukan gently touched Yuan's belly and carefully felt the two little things in her belly. Huh? Waner, my son is kicking me. Mujukan's hand felt a small foot lightly kicking towards his palm. He felt so magical. Yes, you are annoyed that you don't interact with them, Yuan said with a smile. Hey, isn't this scary? Now that I'm used to seeing it like this every day, it's better. At the beginning, I was really afraid of accidentally breaking my stomach. Okay, let's make it sound like my belly is made of bean dregs and farts and will break if touched. Yuan rolled her eyes at him. This person didn't know if he was being too careful. What did Waner say? Go to bed quickly. Mujukan didn't want his ears to be plucked, so he slowly helped her lie down. Then he took off his clothes and went to bed, holding her gently in his arms. Yuan, has the house over there been tidied up? Mujukan, well, you can move there anytime you want. Okay, let's go to sleep. Yuan yawned and fell asleep. In the days that followed, it became increasingly difficult for Yuan to move. Sometimes she would lie down for a whole day. Her legs were a little swollen from not exercising. Mujukan followed her every step of the way, basically hugging her up and down whatever she was doing. Waner, after these two babies are born, there will be no more babies. Mujukan saw it in his eyes and felt pain in his heart. Being a mother is really not easy, he knows it firsthand now. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 363. Chapter 363, Born. Yuan rolled her eyes at her and said nicely, saying that once she gave birth, she would never have another baby. When he couldn't hold it in any longer, he held her tight to see what he would say. Fortunately, it is difficult for female cultivators to get pregnant, otherwise I might have to have 2 babies in 3 years. Ah! My stomach hurts so much. Mujukan, please take me in quickly. I'm going to give birth. Yuan suddenly felt like she had to pee. She knew that her amniotic fluid had broken. Ah! Okay, Mujukan was stunned for a moment, and immediately carried her into the house and put her on the bed. Waner, I'm going to call my mother, to send a message. Mujukan said incoherently, took out the message tremblingly and quickly sent a message to Feng and Mrsu. Soon Mrs. Feng and Mrsu came. Mrs. Feng came in and pushed Mujukan out, who was sweating profusely and at a loss, and closed the door. The two of them worked together to pick up Yuan, put them on the mat that had been prepared, and took off Yuan's pants in 3 strokes. Yuan was in great pain, and she didn't care what it was. She was embarrassed, so the 2 girls just tormented her. It was okay at first, but the pain became more and more painful later on. Even a monk could not bear the pain. Waner, try to keep your breathing even, Mrsu comforted her. She helped deliver her eldest son's 2 children, and she gave birth to 2 more, so she was experienced. Yuan listened to Mrsu's words and said that this way she could maintain some physical strength, but the pain was still the same and getting more and more painful. Mujukan heard Yuan's groaning sound outside, and kept banging on the door and shouting, "Mom, open the door. What are you arguing about? Isn't this how women give birth to children?" Feng Shi was annoyed to death by Mujukan's quarrel and immediately yelled. "Mom, please let him in," Yuan couldn't help but say. She had no idea that men could not enter the delivery room. Let him see how painful it is for a woman to give birth. What are the men doing when a woman gives birth to a baby? Don't be afraid, my dear, my mother is here, Feng said in a warm voice. Yes, her mother is holding us back. Mom, why don't you let Chenna in? Mrsu couldn't stand it any longer, and her son kept shouting outside, making the poor one miserable. Ms. Feng glanced at Mrsu, then opened the door. Mrsu quickly opened the door for Mujukan. As soon as Mujukan came in, he went to Yuan's side. He held Yuan's hand and smoothed the hair on her face with his other hand. "Waner, don't be afraid, I'm here." Yuan nodded. She looked at her mother-in-law gratefully and felt his warm palm, which made her feel more at ease. Continue to bear the 10th level of labor pain. It was getting dark outside, and painful muffled sounds could be heard from time to time in the house. The people who had gone out came back one after another, but they did not leave. They all stood in front of their houses and waited anxiously. Perhaps the little guy knew that everyone was looking forward to their birth, but couldn't bear to trouble his mother anymore. When he first entered Su, a loud baby cry pierced the sky. "Ah, I gave birth!" Xiaoliu jumped excitedly, holding the stone in his arms. "Hush, don't make any noise, there's another one," Yu Heiran said quickly. "Oh." In the room, Mrs. Feng quickly performed several cleaning techniques on the baby, wrapped it in the swaddling clothes she had prepared before, and handed it to Mujukan. "Hold." Mujukan quickly took over his son, without even looking at him, and took out one hand to hold Yuan's hand. Yuan's stomach was still hurting at this time. She felt that her little son was falling and wanted to come out as soon as possible. "Hoo-hoo." Yuan breathed evenly. "Waner, use your strength, you can see the end already," Mrsu shouted. "Yes, Xiao Sier, hold your breath firmly and push harder and the baby will come out," Feng said, stuffing a spirit-gathering pill into Yuan's mouth. Yuan swallowed the elixir, and it melted in her mouth. When the spiritual power in her body was replenished, she exerted herself again. "Ah! Wow!" With another baby crying, Yuan relaxed and fainted. Xiao Sier Feng was startled. She even put down the half-cleaned items and hurriedly checked. Waner, Mujukan was even more shocked. He put the big one aside and used his hand to poke in front of her nose. "Huh, okay, I just fell asleep." Mrs. Feng patted her chest. What women fear most is heavy bleeding after childbirth. "Chenna, please take the child away. We need to clean Waner." Mrsu handed the wrapped second treasure to Mujukan. Mujukan took the second treasure and glanced at him, his consciousness always looking at Yuan. Ms. Feng and Mrsu worked together to clean Yuan, put on her clothes and pants, cover her with a quilt, and then they carried each other out. Waner, Mujukan, and Yuan were the only ones left in the room. Mujukan's beating heart just calmed down. He looked at Yuan, who was sleeping distressedly, and said softly, "A kiss on her lips." He didn't know how he got there for a long time. He was in a state of fear and mist. I wish he could be reborn in the next life, but fortunately Waner survived. Being a mother is really not easy. You really have to sacrifice your own life for the life of your child. Mujukan gently held Yuan in his arms, giving her some spiritual power from time to time. "Brother-in-law, how is my fourth sister?" Xiaoliu quietly opened the door and came in. Asleep, Mujukan said softly. Oh, Xiaolu walked into Yuan gently and took a look in person. She was indeed asleep. She waved her hand to Mujukan and went out gently. In the living room, Uncle Mu has been holding Urbeo in his arms and has never let go. He keeps laughing with his mouth open. Dabeo was snatched back and forth by Yuhairan and his brothers. Hey Dabeo, I'm your third uncle, Yu Haoshan poked Dabeo's wrinkled little face and said. Pa, Yu Hao slapped Yu Haoshan's paw away and said with a look of disgust, Dabeo's little face is so tender, how can it withstand the touch of your paw? Second brother, you've been hugging me for a long time, it's my turn. Xiao Qi stepped forward. Yu Hao glanced at the brothers surrounding him, and reluctantly put Dabeo in Xiao Qi's arms. Hold carefully. Xiao Qi took Dabeo and looked carefully at Dabeo, who had not opened his eyes. He had black hair and red and wrinkled skin. Why is he not cute at all? He looks like a brother-in-law, so ugly. Mujukan, which eye of yours sees that I am ugly? Xiaolu was walking around Uncle Mu, stretching his head to see. Uncle Mu couldn't bear the sight of his aunt's hard work, so he gave the second treasure to Xiaolu. Then, let me hug you for a while. Okay, I'll give our second treasure a hug. Xiaolu took it carefully. Mom, why is Urbeo's face so red, and so ugly? Looking at Xiaolu's troubled face, Mrs. Feng couldn't help but smile. Newborn babies are like this. They will grow out in a few days. You and Xiao were even smaller when they were born, like two little kitten. Oh, so that's it. She thought that children would be white and tender when they were born. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 364. Chapter 364. The Names of the Two Treasures. When my mother gave birth to Yanner and Yeer, she only thought about making delicious food. Mrsu also said with a smile, yes, this child is the same as when his father was born. Mom, you hold Urbeo, and I'll make some soup for the fourth sister. Xiaolu thought of waiting for the fourth sister to get up and want to eat. Ms. Feng waved her hand, no, we have already prepared the food for your fourth sister. Mrs. Feng also glanced at Mrsu, otherwise why would they still be sitting here, not leaving but waiting to see if the fourth child would suffer from postpartum hemorrhage, and then if she woke up to see if she had something to eat. Xiaolu nodded and continued to look around with Bao in his arms. Everyone in the room was smiling. Yuan woke up, touched her belly, and then remembered that she had given birth. Waner, Mujukan felt that the person in his arms had woken up. Where's the baby? Outside, I'll bring him in to show you. Mujukan gently pulled out his arm, got out of bed, opened the door and went out. Mr. Feng and Mrsu came in immediately. Mother. Don't move, Mrs. Feng's wife Su said at the same time, sitting on the edge of the bed. How are you? Do you feel any discomfort? Feng asked. No, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. Yuan felt warm in her heart. The two ladies really felt sorry for her. Fengshi, as long as it's okay. Mrsu asked, Waner, do you want something to eat? Mom, I have no appetite, and I don't want to eat now, Yuan shook her head and said. In the past, she was pregnant with two babies, and they needed nutrition. Now she is a golden elixir monk and does not need to eat anymore. Waner, look at our son at this time. Mujukan came in with two treasures in his arms. Mrs. Feng and Mrsu took the opportunity to go out. They were tired after a long day. Yuan took the two sons and said to Mujukan, go and send Niang and the others off, let them have a good rest. Okay, Mujukan responded and went out. Yuan Ke looked at the two sons in her arms. The newborn had a red face and a little wrinkled skin. The two little guys had their eyes closed and their little mouths squirmed from time to time. So cute, These are their two sons. Yuan couldn't help but give them a gentle kiss on their faces. This kiss made Yuan feel full of happiness. Mujukan came back and closed the door. He gently sat next to her and watched her kiss her son. Let's go into space. Okay, Mujukan nodded. Yuan suddenly appeared on the bed in the space. Mujukan immediately went out to get some spiritual spring water and brought it back, warming it before serving it to her. Wan'er, come on, drink some water. Yuan took the cup and drank the entire cup, feeling that the lost energy had been replenished. Do you want more? No, give your son some drink, a little less but not too much. Okay, then you go to sleep. Yuan shook her head, you don't have to worry about me. After saying that, he took out a healing elixir and swallowed it. When he gave birth to a child, there was a tear underneath, and now it is still burning. Fortunately, she is a monk and can recover as before after taking a healing pill. If she couldn't become an immortal, I don't know how much she would have suffered. The elixir takes effect as soon as it is in the stomach, and is restored after an hour. How are you? Are you okay? Mujukan came up to ask her. Yuan blushed, glared at her, and said angrily, okay. My sons are hungry, what should I do? I'm hungry. Yuan looked at her chest, and there seemed to be no milk. Go out and ask the ladies what they should feed you. Mujukan nodded. After Yuan sent him out, he also searched around the space and found that there was indeed nothing that the baby could eat. If it doesn't work out, just go catch a female monster and bring it back to milk it. Not long after, Mujukan came back and brought back the confinement meal cooked by Feng and the others. What did they say? Yuan asked. Mujukan didn't say anything, but his face turned red. Yuan was surprised. She blushed when she asked. Is there anything else that is unspeakable? Yuan was too lazy to care about him. She sat at the table and ate chicken soup to see if there was milk after eating. After a long time, Mujukan came over and sat next to her, whispering to her. Yuan looked at him in disbelief and said, Mom, did you really say that? Aren't you taking advantage of the opportunity? Mujukan's old face turned red again. Yes, Mother said, babies are always like this after giving birth, and they need to be sucked out first. How about we find 2 wet nurses? Mujukan saw that Yuan didn't say anything. There is no need for a wet nurse. The milk of a mortal wet nurse has no energy, and it is difficult to find a monk wet nurse. If the child does not get close to us in the future, the gain will outweigh the losses. Just use the method you said, and go and prepare. Okay, Mujukan left happily. One day later, Dabeo and Dabeo were indeed able to nurse, but not much, but it was better than nothing. 1 month passed in the blink of an eye, and Yuan's confinement period was finally over. The family once again celebrated their 2 babies' full moon in a lively manner. Everyone went on to do whatever they were supposed to do after that. The courtyard is as deserted as ever. Wan'er, why don't we move to the new yard? Mujukan said as soon as he came back that day. Yesterday the Feng family moved away, and today Uncle Mu also moved away. Okay, Yuan knew that he had wanted to move away for a long time. Mujukan, by the way, Dad named the second treasure. What did you get? Mujukan, the big treasure is named Mu Changqing, and the small treasure is named Mu Changsheng. Okay, she doesn't know how to name it anyway. So the 2 of them also started to move. There were not many things, and it only took half an hour. The 2 treasures were placed in space, and the 2 of them walked over empty-handed. The new house is not far away, 2 houses separated from Yufu. Mujukan opened the formation and the 2 of them went in. Hey, that's good, Mujukan. As soon as Yuan entered the courtyard, the fragrance filled the courtyard and filled her nostrils. Smell it, it made people feel relaxed and happy. The yard is not very big, with 3 two-story attics, a garden in the middle of the attic, and a pavilion in the middle of the garden. Although the attic is not decorated with carved beams or paintings, it is still exquisite and beautiful, and is made entirely of spiritual wood. There is also a small courtyard in front of each loft, with tables, chairs, and benches in it. The entire floor of the house is paved with spiritual stone. It's not bad, it was built according to her preferences. Mujukan is very thoughtful. Like it? Yeah, I like it. Yuan threw herself into his arms, raised her head and kissed him on the lips. Mujukan waved his hand to close the door, activated the formation, and then clasped Yuan's waist with both hands to deepen the hard-won kiss. After a while, the two of them were breathing heavily. Mujukan suddenly hugged her waist, rushed into their attic, went upstairs and put Yuan on the bed. From the beginning to the end, their lips never separated. Mujukan pressed Yuan under him like a hungry wolf. Only God knows how hard he has endured in the past few years. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 365. Chapter 365, Robbery on the Road. After the two adults had eaten and drank, Yuan brought her two sons over. Mujukan sat aside and stared at his son as he sucked the milk. Yuan felt his warm breath on her neck and turned her head to face his handsome face. The two of them had just finished. At this moment, his son Mujukan's face was still flushed, and there was sweat on his forehead. A few strands of hair stuck to his cheeks, making his face suddenly look more charming. Giloo, my God! Goblin! Yuan couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Mujukan smiled at her evilly. This man couldn't bear to look at him. Yuan quickly turned her head to watch her son sucking milk. Mujukan failed to seduce him, so he angrily slapped his other son in the face before getting up. Son, grow up quickly, Mujukan shouted in his heart, looking at his suckling son with a look of sadness as he went out. After Yuan fed her two sons, she released the snakes to watch over them. She got up and went downstairs. Mujukan was sitting cross-legged in the pavilion. Yuan walked over and sat in his arms. They are the only family here, so there is really no need to worry. The two of them can come wherever they want. No wonder Mujukan asked to move early. Mujukan, let's go to the ice field in a few days. Mujukan opened his eyes and hugged her tightly. Don't worry, we won't go until the sons are weaned. Yuan frowned. Your cultivation level is a bit overwhelming, is that okay? During this period, the aura on Mujukan's body became thicker and thicker, and there was a phenomenon of spiritual energy leaking out. If the baby is not born in time, the foundation will be damaged. Mujukan whispered in her ear. Yuan just punched him in the chest. This shameless guy thought about that thing every day. Mujukan immediately hugged her tightly, making her unable to move. Wanner is trying to murder her husband. We are not in a hurry. Our two sons need to be fed. We are outside, and they will starve faster in the space. Stop it. After receiving milk, they had nothing to eat in the space. Okay, Yuan could only compromise. She endured it for the sake of her two sons. In the following days, Mujukan prepared things for the ice field, and occasionally took his wife and son to visit. Then the two of them had to enter the space every day to discourage Mujukan. Ever since they practiced like that, Mujukan's cultivation level has been stable, while Yuan's cultivation level has been rising. She was afraid that her cultivation level would increase too quickly, so every time she finished work, she would use it to polish her cultivation level. The days flew by and a year passed. Dad, Mother, cluck, 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 the two little girls opened their hands and ran towards Mujukan and Yuan. Two people are following each other. Bah, Yuan picked up her bao and kissed her on the face. This year, the two babies have been weaned and can walk and call people. Although they are not very agile, they can also play in the space by themselves. Mujukin's lightning protection array has also been repaired, but it has never been used by his spiritual pets. He plans to refine a few more sets for use after he has overcome the thunder tribulation. Bah, Urbeo also slapped Yuan on the face. What are you talking about? Yuan then noticed that there was a green snake as thick as a little finger in Urbeo's hand. Snake, Urbeo said in a milky voice. Yuan was so angry that her teeth itched. She didn't know where the little snake had deceived the little poisonous snake, but she actually used it as a toy for Liang Bao. Little snake, Yuan performs the lion's roar skill. Master, master, what happened? The little snake flew over in a flash. How can you play with a poisonous snake for Dabeo and Urbeo? The little snake drooped its head. Master, if you want it, little master, I will. Forget it, Wanur, nothing will happen to these little snakes. Mujukin came over and persuaded in a gentle voice. Yuan rolled her eyes at him. She didn't know why Mujukin was talking to the little snake. The two of them entered the space, and the two treasures were outside for the little snake to watch. He could take as long as he wanted. Mujukin touched his nose and quickly ran away with Dabeo in his arms. The next day, the two of them went to Uncle Mu's house and Bai Zi's house for a walk. When they left 5 top-quality foundation building pills for Mrs. Su. Then they went to find Yu Heiran, put a storage bag of things and 10 gold-forming pills, and then the two of them left Juyo City. After leaving the city, Mujukin took out the flying boat, and the two of them flew on the flying boat towards the ice field. The ice field is called Kyangshan Ice Field, located in the North Pole of Kinjao continent. The Kyangshan ice field is covered with snow all year round and is extremely cold. Monks with low cultivation levels simply cannot bear the cold. Although the Kyangshan ice field is cold, it is rich in resources. The resources are abundant, but the dangers are also great. The monsters inside are the first, and the bad weather is the second. Therefore, more monks went there, but more monks left and never came back. To get to the Kyangshan ice field, you have to cross the Kinjao continent. Juyu is in the south and the Kyangshan ice field is in the north. It would take 10 years to travel by light flying boat, and it would take half a year to take the teleportation array. However, Juyo City did not have a teleportation array to reach the starting point. They had to take the flying boat to Shuangqiao City to take the teleportation array. On the flying boat, only Mujukin and Xiaoxi were there at this time, while Yuan was in the space getting food for his sons. Mom, we want to be with you, Urbeo said, lying on her body with a pout. It's very dangerous outside, just wait until you are older. Yuan touched Liang Bao's bald head. No, Urbeo stood up and ran away angrily. This child has such a bad temper. Yuan hugged Dabeo, but Dabeo was more obedient. One of the two children was happy to be quiet and the other was happy to be active. Xiaobeo is so naughty and courageous. Yuan is worried that when Urbeo grows up, he is afraid that he will cause some big trouble. She stepped forward, took Xiaobeo's hand, and appeared on the flying boat with a flash of consciousness. Huh? Why did they come out? Mujukin picked up Urbeo and asked. Ask the one in your hand. Mujukin pinched Urbeo's little face and asked with a straight face, are you the one who wants to come out? Don't you know it's dangerous outside? Urbeo saw that his father had a serious face and did not dare to make any mistakes, so he nodded obediently. Is that going back or outside? Go back, Urbeo said softly. Mujukin still said with a straight face, that's pretty much it. Mom and Dad have something to do outside. You must be good inside, otherwise Dad will beat your little ass. This brat is only a little old, so he can't cure you yet. As expected, when Urbeo heard that he was about to be spanked, he quickly twisted around to get off, and Yuan immediately put them into the space. Yuan asked, Shuangqiao City is coming soon. Well, it's almost there. There's a situation, the two of them said in unison. Mujukan immediately landed the flying boat on the top of a mountain and waited for those who followed. Shuhushya shuishwa. They were immediately surrounded by 7 people. A robber, Mujukan asked in a deep voice. Ha ha ha, Taoist friend is quite smart. A rugged-looking Jindan in King I laughed a few times in the later period, but his eyes fell on Yuan. Yuan frowned and stood behind Mujukan. She curled her lips. Someone was going to be in bad luck. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 366. Chapter 366 Kyangshan Icefield. Ga. The rugged monk who was laughing suddenly stopped laughing and fell to the ground with a thud, bleeding from all his orifices. The other 6 people also had a look of pride on their faces. When they checked, they found that the rugged monk had died. Just when the 6 of them were thinking of doing something, they all fell to the ground and died. Mujukan and Yuan looked at each other and smiled. How could they give them a chance to do something? They were killed together and they were still on their way. Let's talk about the fight, and the spiritual power in Mujukan's body will burst out. If he can't suppress it, it will be troublesome. The 2 of them quickly cleaned up the battlefield, and then flew to Shuangqiao City in a flying boat. After the last trace of sunset disappeared from the sky, the 2 of them arrived at Shuangqiao City. The 2 of them entered the city and went straight to the city lord's mansion without stopping, where there was a teleportation array. Half a year later, the 2 finally stood outside the Kyangshan Icefield. At the Kyangshan Icefield, as far as the eye can see, the endless glaciers are covered with white snow, and the sky and the earth become one color. Let's go in. Mujukan took Yuan's hand and stepped into the ice field. As soon as I stepped in, a coldness hit my whole body. It's so cold. Yuan shrank her neck and quickly put a protective shield on her body to feel better. How about you go into the space, Mujukan said when he saw how cold she looked. Yuan shook his head and said, let's look for it quickly. After we find the ice crystal flower, we can make the elixir here and you can survive the disaster here. No one will come here, so it should be safe. In the past 6 months, Mujukan's aura has become thicker and thicker. If he doesn't find the ice crystal flower to refine the infant pill, he will be in big trouble. It is not necessary to use the yin-yang pill to form a yin, either because it is not possible, or because there is a worry that the spiritual energy in the middle will not be supplied, and there is not enough spiritual energy to break through the shackles. In such a situation, it is better not to conceive a baby. Once it fails, the foundation will be damaged and cannot be repaired. Monks all know that breaking through the shackles requires a strong attack. Even if the spiritual stones in her dimension were piled up in a mountain for him to absorb, the spiritual power that the spiritual energy gathered could not reach the level of force needed for a breakthrough. It is still possible if all of them are medium-grade spiritual stones. Okay, Mujukan and Yuan could only use their footwork to run towards the center of the ice field. Boom, there was a loud noise. Just as the 2 of them were running fast, an ice bear suddenly rushed out from the ice under their feet and struck the 2 of them with 2 palms at a very fast speed. Ah! The 2 of them were unprepared and were hit hard. Poof, poof. The 2 of them fell far away and spit out a large mouthful of blood. Boom. Ice Bear saw that the 2 of them were only injured and clapped his hands again. 2 strong forces with biting ice and coldness hit them, and the 2 of them rolled away. Boom, the 2 palms failed, and 2 ice caves were photographed where the 2 of them were. The ice bear's attack failed, and it howled in anger. Just as it looked up to the sky and howled, the soul thorns of Yu and Wan were released in time. This time it was the howl of pain from an ice bear. Mujukan took the opportunity to roll to Yuan's side and helped her up. Waner. Yuan was already semi-conscious, and Mujukin panicked. He quickly fed her a healing pill, stuffed one into his mouth, and then used his energy to dissolve the potion for her. Bang, the ice bear over there howled a few times and then fell to the ground dead. The power of the elixir here healed Yuan's injuries quickly, and Yuan woke up soon after. Waner, Mujukin was overjoyed when he saw her waking up, and immediately held her in his arms. He was really afraid that Waner would have an accident. Mujukin calmed down only when he hugged a living person. Cough cough cough, I'm fine, don't worry. Yuan coughed a few times to clear out the turbid air in her chest. She hugged Mujukin back and was just in danger. Both of them clearly had their spiritual consciousness paying attention. She didn't expect that the ice bear could still hold its breath under the ice and merge with the ice. Even their spiritual consciousness could not stop it. Not visible. After a long time, Mujukin held Yuan's face, kissed her deeply, picked her up, walked to the ice bear's body, and put the body away. The two of them took the opportunity to enter the space. In the space, two little guys were lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. Mujukin put Yuan on the bed and quickly fetched a bowl of spiritual spring water, warmed it and brought it to her. Yuan smiled, "My husband is so kind." Mujukin rubbed her head lovingly, "Husband, you should be kind to you. Use the quick luck skill to heal your injuries." Yuan, "Okay." Mujukin took the empty bowl and put it down. He also sat cross-legged next to Yuan and meditated. Before, he just swallowed the healing elixir. His injuries are no better than Yuan's, he just has more powerful skills than hers. After the two of them finished healing, Liangbao also woke up, and the two took care of them again before coming out of space. "When we come, we should let my mother come with us," Mujukin said. "It's okay. We have to pay special attention when exercising our two children. It doesn't matter if you take it slow." The two of them were particularly careful this time. When they discovered the ice bear, they immediately went to kill it without giving the ice bear the slightest chance. On this day, the two came to an iceberg. "Waner, do you think that's the one on the mountainside?" Mujukin asked, pointing to a 1-foot-tall crystal-clear ice sculpture next to an ice cave. Yuan looked around with her consciousness, and when she arrived in front of the ice cave, a powerful aura came from inside. "It should be, but there is a powerful monster in the cave. Please pay attention, I will let the little snake come out." Throughout their search, they never saw a single ice crystal flower. Instead, they dug up a few ice snow lotuses. Mujukin nodded, "Okay." Yuan's consciousness moved, and the little snake came out. "Little snake, go see what kind of monster is in the ice cave, and pick the ice crystal flowers at the entrance of the cave." Yuan pointed to the ice cave and said to the little snake. After the little snake understood, it whizzed a few times and flew up. After a while the little snake flew down. "Master, there are not only monsters in there, but also a monk in the nascent soul stage, who seems to be injured." The two of them looked at each other. They were injured. They must have been injured in a fight with the monster in the ice cave. That person was probably also going for the ice crystal flower. "Let's go up and have a look," Yuan said. Mujukin hesitated for a while and nodded, then the two of them flew up the ice cave with their swords. Little Snake went in first, and the two put away their flying swords and walked in. Sure enough, a nascent soul monk fell to the ground in the cave and stared at the two of them. He looked at Mujukin's eyes, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "Senior, what are you doing?" Yuan did not ignore the joy in the monk's eyes. She stepped forward and stood in front of Mujukin. He, looking at his severed hands and feet, it is certain that this person has no good intentions. If he wants to seize his body, it's his soul. "Are you two here to look for ice crystal flowers? I gave half my life in exchange for it. I wonder what I can give you in exchange for it." The Yuanying monk waved his hand, and a 4th level fire shadow bird appeared next to him. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 367. Chapter 367 Nascent Soul Tribulation. Yuan was confused in her heart. Didn't the master or the servant sense the little snake? Offices. The little snake flew in front of Yuan with a hiss, staring at the fire shadow bird eagerly. Master, do you want to eat roasted bird? Yuan, you can eat whatever you want. Oh, Mujukan, go pick the ice crystal flowers and see what the senior will give you in exchange for them. Mujukan's eyes darkened. This man was trying to ruin his plans as soon as he came up. He wanted to spare his life, but he couldn't be spared like this. He nodded and said, okay. The Yuanying monks were still very proud. When they saw the little snake coming out, their master and servant suddenly withered. My little friend, there's a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I don't think so. Yuan shook her head and sent a message to the little snake. Yuan sent out 10 soul stabs at the same time, cutting through the mess with a sharp knife, and the villain died from talking too much. Ah! Monk Yuanying opened his eyes wide and swallowed his breath unwillingly. Choo choo choo. The fire shadow bird only struggled a few times before the snake took away the demon elixir, and died after flopping on the ground a few times. Mujukan heard the sound, took the ice crystal flower and came back. All dead. All dead. Yuan stepped forward and took the bodies of 2 monsters and 1 person on the ground into the black earth. Waner, look, Mujukan handed the jade box to Yuan. Yuan took a look and saw that it was indeed the ice crystal flower. The whole elixir was as crystal clear as ice, with a thumb-thick stem and 10-finger-long willow-shaped leaves. 1 leaf lasted a year, which was 1,000 years, just right. Used as medicine. Well, just in time, let's enter space. Waner, wait a minute, Mujukan said, touching his nose. Yuan has black lines all over her head and is about to come again. He has been tormented by him during this period. But seeing the spiritual power leaking out of him, she couldn't bear it. Immediately putting the little snake into the space, Mujukan consciously cleaned the cave and moved out of bed. After Mujukan activated the formation, the 2 of them had a rest in the cave. In the space, Yuan was sitting in the alchemy room. She took a deep breath and carefully processed the 49 elixirs of the Jiying Dan. Then the refining begins. There is only 1 ice crystal flower, so Yuan can only succeed and not fail. It was so difficult to find an ice crystal flower. It took them a month to find this one in the ice field. This ice sheet is also huge, and they haven't penetrated 1/3 of it yet. If their cultivation level is high enough and they have the confidence to go deeper, there should still be ice crystal flowers deep in the ice sheet. The ones outside are also illuminated by people. 10 days after the space, Yuan's consciousness is staring at the alchemy furnace. Now is the critical moment for the alchemy to be completed. The spell in her hands never stops, and the sweat on her forehead doesn't stop, flowing into her eyes and into her mouth. Yuan continued to stare at the alchemy furnace as if she didn't feel anything. After a long time, there was a buzzing sound from the alchemy furnace, and then a scent of alchemy filled the entire alchemy room. Phew, it worked. Yuan sat down on the ground, not even wanting to move her fingers. After a long time, Yuan finally swallowed a spirit replenishing pill and a spirit replenishing pill. After she had some spiritual power in her body, Yuan got up and opened the lid of the furnace. 5 round pills glowing with white light lay at the bottom of the furnace. Yuan quickly packed the elixirs. Fortunately, one of them was a mid-grade infant nurturing pill, and with 4 lower-grade infant nurturing pills, Mujukan would have no problem conceiving a baby. She came to Mujukan's training room and knocked on the door. Waner, Mujukan opened the door. Succeeded, get out quickly, the spiritual power on his body can be seen with the naked eye. Okay, thank you Waner. Mujukan kissed her and the 2 came out of the room. The two of them flew down to the ice cave again, preparing to give birth to a baby in this valley. Mujukin quickly set up the spirit gathering array and lightning protection array, while Yuan poured the spirit stones into the spirit gathering array. Waner, stand farther away, Mujukin said, then sat in the spirit gathering array. Yuan nodded, flew far away, and released the little snake. The master and servant sat on the ice field to protect Mujukin. Sure enough, an hour later, dark clouds came over the sky and thunder and lightning began to roar. Yuan looked nervously at Mujukin in the formation, her heart pounding. Boom, click. A thick bolt of lightning struck Mujukin. Mujukin's body trembled, and blood immediately flowed out of the corner of his mouth, but he still sat motionless with his eyes closed. Yuan bit her lip to prevent herself from making any noise that would affect him. The nascent soul tribulation is 29 heavenly tribulations, and one must be struck by lightning for 18 tribulations. This was the first time, and Mujukin was already injured. Boom, click. The second calamity thunder fell. Mujukin groaned, his body trembling uncontrollably, and he looked like he was about to collapse. He held on tightly, and the power of thunder and lightning acted recklessly in his body, breaking the meridians wherever it touched. Even the movement technique is of no use. Mujukin was in a hurry. If he didn't expel the power of thunder and lightning from his body, the third thunder disaster would come again. If you can't hold on and activate the lightning protection formation now, how will you catch the tribulation thunder later? His mind flashed, and he suddenly remembered that Waner had said when she was going through the golden pill tribulation that she could use the technique of cultivating mystical power to absorb the power of thunder and lightning to refine her body. He had practiced bone refining and skin refining before, and now it was time to refining the internal organs. He simply started with skin refining to see if it would be of any use. Now he is a dead horse being treated as a living horse doctor, and he has no other techniques to try. So when he started to operate the technique, the power of thunder and lightning could indeed move along with the technique and be slowly absorbed by the skin. When the skin absorbed the power of thunder and lightning, it really changed. The skin became tight and hard. Ha ha ha. Mujukin laughed 3 times in his heart. Rumble, click. Just when he was happy, the third tribulation thunder fell, and Mujukin was instantly hit until his mouth was full of smoke. This is called extreme happiness giving rise to sadness, so Mujukin gave a wry smile. The cassocks on his body were all torn to pieces, and the meat had a meaty smell. Mujukin didn't have time to smell the fragrance of his own flesh, so he quickly started to use his skills. He didn't dare to get carried away anymore, or he would be struck by lightning. Yuan, who was watching from a distance, was frightened. Every thunder struck her like a blow to her heart, causing it to throb painfully. As the calamity thunder struck one after another, Yuan found that the pain on Mujukin's face did not worsen, but instead he felt relaxed. Yuan was puzzled. What happened to him? The lightning protection array was not opened either. Did he think of other ways to avoid lightning? Suddenly, she remembered that after she had passed through the golden pill tribulation, she had told him to use the technique of cultivating black energy to absorb the power of thunder and lightning to refine her body. Fortunately, he remembered, she even forgot to remind him. Mujukin was finishing the bone refining at this time. He looked inside and felt that the bones had some lightning power. Originally the bones were bright white, but now there is a faint purple color on the bones. Haha, now he hopes that this calamity thunder will strike more, so that he can practice the skill all at once. The next tribulation will happen again. You don't have to spend time and energy to train your body every day, so it's much better to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 368. Chapter 368 Fire Spirit Wine. Sure enough, my wife is smart. Thunders from the sky rained down one after another. 5 days later, the 18 tribulation thunders finally finished. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the sky was clear again. Yuan let out a sigh of relief before approaching Mujukan with the little snake. At the center of the thunderstorm, there is still a strong smell of thunder and lightning in the air, making people want to sneeze from the smell. But the place where Mujukan was staying had been struck by lightning and a big pit had been created, and he was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the pit. Yuan could not come forward to disturb him, so she had to sit with the little snake on the edge of the pit and wait. Phew, Mujukan suddenly flew up from the pit. Ah, I'm freezing to death. There is an air conditioning down there under water, which can freeze people to the bone. Mujukan came up and rubbed his hands like a mortal, jumping on the ice. Really? Yuan's eyes lit up. Mujukan jumped twice and hugged Yuan tightly for warmth. Yuan was disgusted and performed several cleaning operations on him. As expected, his body was cold. It seems to be really cold. Yuan saw his trembling appearance and quickly led Mujukan and Xiaoxi into the space. Entering the space, Mujukan quickly used his energy to drive away the cold and consolidate his cultivation. Yuan took care of her son. A month later, Mujukan walked out of the training room and came to the wooden house. Dad, Dabeo saw him and rushed toward him. Mujukan picked up Dabeo and pecked him on the face. Where is your mother? Inside that, Dabeo pointed to the red earth. Mujukan looked at Hongdidi and carried Dabeo into the wooden house. Inside, Dabeo was having a great time playing with the little snake. There were things everywhere on the floor, bed, and table in the house, and it was as messy as a garbage house. Mujukan gave the little snake a knife. If the tiger is not around, this guy will become the overlord. Xiaobao didn't dare to think how bad his father's face was, so he rushed towards him. No matter how angry Mujukan was, he lost his temper when his son rushed towards him, and he quickly picked up his son. The three of them played for a while, then put their two sons on the bed while he tidied up the house. The little snake vomited its core and ran away long ago. In the red earth, Yuan took out a jar of wine from the ground. She buried it in the ground a month ago. When Mujukan said that there was a very cold air under the big pit, she was thinking of ways to see if there was anything to keep out the cold. She wanted to explore below and see what was under the ice sheet. This jar of wine was brewed with fire spiritual fruits and fire elixir. They all have fire spirit roots, so drinking this fire spirit wine does not worry about causing harm to the body. Yuan picked up the wine jar and came out. Are you out of seclusion? When he came back, he saw Mujukan playing with his son. Well, Waner, what are you doing? Hey, you're having a baby, let's celebrate. With that said, Yuan put the wine jar on the table, brought 2 jade cups over, opened the jar and poured 2 cups. Well, not bad. As soon as the wine was poured out, the aroma of wine filled the room, and both of them shrugged their noses. Master, where am I? The little snake flew over as soon as it smelled the aroma of wine. This is for you. Yuan gave a cup to the little snake. Mujukan picked up another glass of wine and smelled it. Hey, Waner, what kind of spiritual wine is this that has such strong fire spiritual power? When was it brewed? In the past, apart from the aroma of wine, how could one feel the spiritual power of fire like this? Yuan said with a smile, some time ago, you tried to see if you can keep out the cold. Oh, Waner wants to go down and explore. Okay, let me take a look first. After saying this, Mujukan drank the glass of wine. He was also interested in the bottom of the ice sheet, and unexpectedly Waner had already thought of a solution. After drinking the spirit wine, the fire spiritual power immediately flows to the limbs and bones, and the body immediately feels warm. Mujukan was pleasantly surprised and said quickly, that's right. Waner, this fire spirit wine is really good. It should be able to keep out the cold. Yuan was also happy. She took the cup and poured a glass of wine and drank it. After the wine, her stomach felt hot all over. She quickly sat down cross-legged and did her exercises, and it took a long time to absorb the fire spiritual power. Mujukin chuckled in his heart. Wanner's cultivation was still unable to withstand the alcohol. He held the two treasures and sat next to her and watched. Wanner's mouth was filled with the aroma of wine, and her face was flushed. Her rosy face was like a ripe cherry, delicate and charming, extremely alluring. Mujukin couldn't help but feel his Adam's apple rolling. After a long time, Yuan opened her eyes. It's really good. If you drink it and don't refine it, it won't be finished in 3 hours. Yuan stood up and said, you can manage it for at least an hour under that ice sheet. You can go a long way in 1 hour. Huh, you. Yuan then noticed that Mujukin was looking at her with fascinated eyes and his face was red. Mujukin took the two guys down and asked the little snake to take them out to find those spiritual pets to play with. Then the door closes. Wanner, I plan to let a spiritual pet go out to survive the tribulation. We can feel more at ease outside. Mujukin thought of the two little guys rummaging around in the house. Yuan Juan nodded in his arms. The 5th level monster could transform into a human body after successfully transcending the tribulation. It could indeed take care of the two treasures in space. It is really not appropriate for the two of them to be outside for a long time and the children are still young. What's more, after collecting these 5th level monsters for so long, they have never come out of the space except entering the Juya forest. If you successfully overcome the tribulation, you can not only take care of the baby but also help in fights. The two of them got up and got dressed and went out to the valley. They set up a lightning protection array and a spirit gathering array next to where Mujukin had originally escaped from the tribulation, and then sprinkled spiritual stones. Yuan entered the space again and moved out the cute monster with the head of a dog and the body of a wolf, and brought out 2 6th level elixirs. There are no high-level spiritual feeding pills for monster beasts to eat, so they can only swallow high-level spiritual elixirs. As soon as the monster entered the formation, Yuan made it swallow 2 elixirs, and the two of them immediately flew all the way to protect it. Sure enough, not long after, the calamity thunder from the sky came down. The two of them were horrified to see that the calamity thunder of this 5th level monster was extraordinary and easy to cause harm. Mujukin, do you think the monster can survive it? Yuan held Mujukin's hand and asked. With this series of thunderstorms, the monster was almost reduced to ashes. Having wasted so many spiritual stones, elixirs, and a set of lightning protection formations, if it failed, Yuan would still feel a dull pain in her heart. When the monsters die, they die. Anyway, there are a lot of them in Juya Forest. Watch it until the end. Looking at the barrel thick thunder and lightning, Mujukin was not sure. The 4th level lightning protection array was destroyed when it was struck halfway, and it could only be judged by the monster's own ability. Ouch! Suddenly, the dog-headed monster in the formation screamed and rushed straight into the air, breaking the thunder and lightning into 2 pieces. Yuan and the two were dumbfounded. How could this be done? The power of the thunder and lightning is reduced by half. Smart, Yuan gave it a thumbs up and couldn't help but praise it. Well, that's clever. Wanner can use this method the next time she goes through a calamity. Mujukin couldn't help but praise. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 369. Chapter 369 Underground Labyrinth. Hey, I didn't expect that this cute brain is not stupid, but can be used better than a human brain at critical moments. Monks crossing the tribulation only thought about how to resist the thunder tribulation, and never thought about fundamentally resolving the power of thunder and lightning. Today's sighting gave them another insight. Suddenly, there were several crackling sounds in the distance, and monks were coming. The two looked at each other and stood up. Sure enough, four figures entered their consciousness, 3 men and 1 woman. One of them, an old man, was in the middle nascent soul stage, and the 2 men and 1 woman were both in the golden core stage. Shushishishua. 4 people stand opposite 2 people. The old man in green raised his hand to stop the other 3 people. He raised his eyes and looked at the dog-headed monster in the sky who was still going through the tribulation. Then he looked at Yuan and the 2 of them carefully, feeling a little surprised at the sight of 2 such young monks. A nascent soul who is less than 100 years old, and a golden core who is less than 100 years old. To be precise, these 2 people are around 70 years old. When did such a cultivation genius appear in the world of immortality, they still don't know. Is it the spiritual pet of fellow Taoist? A voice like a loud bell sounded. Mujukin's eyes were like torches, but his voice sounded faintly. What else? If fellow Taoist people are here to observe, then please do so. If not, then make a move. He is also in the nascent soul stage now, and is not afraid of the old Yuanying man opposite him at all. Wan'er, who is in the Jindan stage, can handle it alone. The Yuanying old man frowned after hearing Mujukin's words. The young Yuanying monk's tone was quite calm. As expected, geniuses are very proud. He looked at the thunderstorm that was about to end in the sky and thought about it. Those are their spiritual pets. It would be impossible for these 2 people to hand them over directly. If they kill these 2 people, their spiritual pets will also die. Moreover, these 2 people have such cultivation at such a young age. They are either from a large sect or a large cultivation family, so there is no need for Fan to cause trouble for himself. Fellow Taoist, don't get me wrong, we are here to observe. The old Yuanying winked at the other 3 people, and the 4 of them sat down and looked at the dog-headed beast in the sky. Yuan and Yuan also looked at each other, turned around and sat on the ground, releasing their spiritual consciousness. After one day. Rumble, click. The last tribulation thunder struck down on the dog-headed beast. The dog-headed beast screamed and fell down, falling right into the deep pit. Bang, the huge body of the dog-headed beast fell down, causing the ice to crack. Pengpanpan, boom. As the ice broke, the cold spiritual energy in the ground bubbled up to the ground like spring water, and the 2 large pits struck by lightning collapsed straight down. It's over, Yuan said with regret in her heart. If she fell like this, she would freeze to death instead of being struck by lightning. Wan'er, stay here and don't move. I'll go down and take a look. Okay, Yuan gave him a glass of fire spirit wine. Mujukin drank it quickly, put the cup in Yuan's hand, and in the blink of an eye he disappeared. When he came up, he was holding a charred dog-headed beast in his hands. How is it? Yuan took a few steps forward and asked. Take it in, Mujukin said hurriedly. Not dead, Yuan quickly went into the bamboo house in the space. The other 4 people also discovered something unusual at the bottom of the pit when the dog-headed beast fell down. When Mujukin lifted the dog-headed beast out, the 4 of them had already flown down to the bottom of the pit. Yuan curled her lips, waiting for them to see something nice later. After taking in the dog-headed beast, she also drank a glass of fire spirit wine, and then flew down to the bottom of the pit with Mujukin. The ice at the bottom of the pit cracked layer by layer, leaving many gaps. The 4 people had long since disappeared. But it hasn't been frozen yet. This ice spiritual power is so rich. Yuan took a few deep breaths. Come on, Wan'er. Here Mujukin used his sword to cut a path that could allow 1 person to pass. Okay, Yuan stretched out her hand and took Mujukin. After drinking the spiritual wine, as expected, I no longer felt cold and my body felt warm. The 2 of them were walking, cutting, and watching. It is sparkling in all directions below, like walking in a crystal palace. Just as the 2 of them were carefully digging under the ice, there was a sound of rapid running in the ice. Wanner, be careful, it's ice earthworms. Mujukin put a defensive shield on the two of them and stared at the ice earthworms in the ice with all his concentration. This kind of monster has a soft body, its body is no more than 3 feet long, and its arms are thick. It specializes in looking for spiritual things to devour in the ice. This ice is also one of their food. Although their bodies are soft, they are extremely hard, and they also have good teeth that can penetrate the hard ice freely. Monks are most troubled when encountering this kind of monster, and they also like to capture monks for food. Ka-ka-ka. The sound is getting closer and closer. Mujukin raised the magic weapon flying sword, and poured spiritual power into the sword. The sword that was a foot long suddenly grew to half a foot, and he swung it out with all his strength. The sound of click, click, click kept ringing, and soon a pool of bright red seeped out of the ice. Mujukin swung his sword again. I saw the ice melting where the sword energy had crossed, and a passage for one person to pass through suddenly appeared. Let's go, Mujukin took Yuan and flew over. Wow, I feel a little cold. Yuan couldn't hold it anymore, so she immediately drank a glass of wine and felt better. Mujukin, would you like a drink? No need, Mujukin said as he opened the way down. One day later, the speed of the two people's descent slowed down. Huh, what is this? Mujukin touched the ice cube. It's not like ice, it's stone. Yuan also stepped forward. Wanner, come here quickly, there is a passage here. Channel, how could it be? Is there really something buried under this ice sheet? Yuan hurried over. Mujukin had already used his spiritual consciousness to check. The passage was circular and there were no monsters. He led Yuan forward step by step. The passage came to the end and went down again, and the two of them were ready to go down. It's just that the two of them couldn't walk down the downward passage. Mujukin picked up Yuan and sat down on the ice. With a few swishes, she slid to the ice below. The two stood up and looked at the passages extending in all directions. It's even colder down here. Standing here, the cold air penetrates into the body. The two drank the spiritual wine again. At this time, one drink of spiritual wine will only last half an hour. How to go? Mujukin looked at the bright maze-like passage. Just take a look and see if there is anything useful. Yuan nodded. So the two of them walked into a passage casually. The passage is surrounded by ice on both sides, and is occasionally connected to a passage. When the two of them passed a room, they stopped and turned around to enter. After entering, the two of them made a conscious inspection. It looks like a round room, with everything as smooth as a mirror and nothing. The two of them continued. There are many such houses in the back, but they are all empty. Just as the two of them turned into another passage, a white shadow flashed past in the original passage. Mujukin, go over and take a look. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 370. Chapter 370 Ice Arrow Python. Yuan nodded and followed Mujukin closely, her consciousness highly focused. As soon as the two of them arrived at the intersection, there was a sudden sound of breaking through the air. A row of ice arrows shot at the two people from the front with thunderous force. The two of them stood in the middle of the passage, unable to retreat from the front, back or left. There was movement on both sides. Mujukin swung his flying sword and directed the sword energy toward the ice arrow. The sword energy exploded and was unable to intercept the ice arrow at all. The ice arrows were still shot at the two people unstoppably. Seeing that he was about to die, Yuan had no choice but to take Mujukin into the space at the critical moment. Mujukin, do you think there is someone down here, in the space? The two people collapsed on the ground in shock. It was just a close call, just a few seconds before the two of them were shot. Mujukin shook his head. He didn't know. Even the early stage of Yuanying's cultivation couldn't catch the ice arrow. What was it coming from? Is he a monk in the transformation stage? Mujukan picked up Yuan, and the two returned to the wooden house to take care of their sons first. When the two babies saw their father coming in with their mother in their arms, they jumped off the bed and ran over to hug Mujukan's legs. "Daddy, I want a hug." Dabeo also raised his head and said, "Daddy, I want to hug you too." "You bastards, I'm wasting my time hurting you. I'm trying to steal your father from you." Yuan got out of Mujukan's arms and walked straight to the dog-headed beast's bamboo house. Mujukan glared at each of his sons, then took another one into the house to feed them. Yuan came to the bamboo house. There was a woman of about 20 years old sitting cross-legged in the house. She was dressed in black and had a bun on her head with a hairpin. The woman has delicate features and beautiful eyes. She is considered a beautiful woman. Hearing the sound of the door opening, she immediately got out of bed and bowed respectfully to Yuan. "Xiaoqing has met the master." "Well, not bad. Has your cultivation been consolidated?" Yuan was very satisfied. He originally chose her to go through the tribulation first because she was a female, had the blood of a dog, and was a loyal spiritual pet. She is relieved to take care of her two sons, and women should be more careful. Xiaoqing nodded. "Master, it's consolidated." "Thank you, Master, for making it happen." Yuan waved her hand. "You're welcome. As long as we're not around, you just need to take good care of the two young masters." "Yes, not to mention taking care of the two young masters, there is no problem even letting her go out to protect the master." She never dared to think that one day she would have the opportunity to leave the Nine Nether Forest and successfully survive the tribulation and become a human body. "Well, then come with me to meet them." "Okay, Master." After saying that, Xiaoqing followed Yuan to the wooden house. In the wooden house, Mujukan was still feeding his two sons. When he saw their master and servant coming over, he glanced at Xiaoqing behind him and saw that he was an honest person. "Dabeo Xiaobeo, this is your sister Xiaoqing, can you let her take care of you from now on?" Yuan sat next to Dabeo and pointed at Xiaoqing and said. The two treasures turned their heads to look at Xiaoqing at the same time, and they nodded. Liangbao has an instinctive like and dislike of people and things. If Liangbao doesn't like it, Yuan will be really upset. "It's better now, my hard work was not in vain." Yuan winked at Mujukan, and Mujukan put down the bowl and walked out. Xiaoqing understood what the master meant. She stepped forward, picked up the bowl, and fed the two treasures one by one like Mujukan. Liangbao smiled at her and ate obediently. Yuan saw that there was no problem, and then told Xiaoqing what the two babies should eat and drink every day. After that, Xiaoqing took the two babies to play. Yuan was the only two people left in the room. Both of them frowned, not knowing what to do. Suddenly Yuan shouted, "Little snake, come here." "Master, here we come." The little snake came to Yuan in the blink of an eye. "Little snake, we were attacked outside. The opponent is very strong, but we don't know whether it is a human or a beast. Can you go out and take a look first? The snake is small and is of the 5th level, so it is less likely to be attacked." The little snake nodded without hesitation. Yuan touched its head, still a little worried, and said, "Be careful when you go out." "Little snake, okay." So Yuan's consciousness moved and she sent the little snake out. The two of them can only wait in the space. Mujukan thought that it would not be a long time to wait. He took Yuan's hand and said, "Waner, how about I go to Xiaoguan first, but you are not allowed to go out alone." "Then you go, I won't go out, I'll wait for you." "Forget it, I'll wait with you." Mujukan knew just by looking at her eyes that her words would fall on deaf ears. "It's up to you." Yuan was thinking about the little snake outside. Just listen to what Mujukan said. You have to go out when it's time to go out. Yuan used her spiritual consciousness to open some space and looked outside, but unfortunately she could only see part of the passage. There is no sound yet, very quiet. Let's go out, Yuan said, this is not normal. Mujukan quickly held her hand. When the two people came out of the space, they lay down on the ground, but the passage was quiet. Little snake! Yuan shouted, but there was no movement. The two of them quickly got up and ran towards the direction from which the ice arrow had come. Little snake, Yuan shouted as she walked. The two of them walked around the underground passage countless times, but neither saw the shadow of the little snake, nor did they encounter any more ice arrows. Eh? That's that? Mujukan, let's go over and have a look. When the two of them reached a passage, they saw several people lying on the ice at the end of the passage. Okay, those seem to be the 4 people we met up there before, Mujukan said. It's very similar. The two of them ran over quickly. The 4 people on the ground were no longer breathing and turned into 4 ice sculptures. Mujukan looked over their bodies. There were no wounds on their bodies. They must have died from the cold. Yuan, put them away first, and bury them after we get out. Mujukan nodded and put the 4 corpses into storage bags. Whoops, a shadow flashed and came to them in the blink of an eye. Owner. Yuan took the little snake and rolled it around her wrist and asked, where have you been? We have been looking for you for a long time. Did you encounter anything when you came out? Yes, master, I will take you there. After speaking, the little snake flew up and led the way. 2 people followed. After twists and turns, the 2 of them came to a square. On the square lay a dead monster. Master, look, it's this ice arrow python. The 2 of them flew closer and saw that it was indeed a silver-white giant python. There was a hole in the giant python's body where the demon core was located. Yuan glanced at the little snake. The little snake opened its mouth, and the intention entered its mouth. Yuan put away the giant python. The python meat is a good thing. She estimated that the fleeting white shadow they saw was the body of the giant python, and it was also the python that launched the attack. It would be unlucky just to meet a little snake like this. The little snake has the blood of the divine beast soaring snake. If the little snake's light bloodline suppresses it, it will have no choice but to wait for death. End of this chapter.